Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. We begin our video with a story in which our OP confronted an insane restaurant customer. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Sorry, sir, I will not be sued. This is a story about my very first job as a waiter back in high school. On my first day, I was warned about a customer that he liked to complain a lot and be very annoying to employees, so I was aware of it. A few weeks went by with no major issues, and he starts to ask me questions one day after being served. Customer: why is my bill more expensive today? Me: because it's a Saturday and Saturday's buffet is a little more expensive. Why's that? Don't know, I just charge what I was told to. You should have told me before I ate. You come here 3 times a week, so I thought you knew. You know it's illegal to charge different prices at buffets, right? No, I don't think it is. Yes, it's illegal, so you need to charge me the cheaper price or I'll sue you, and you'll have to give me a lot of money. Well, I'm not responsible for deciding the prices here, so I don't think I'll have to pay you. But if you want to sue the owner, I can give you his name. No, you'll have to pay, not the owner. Okay, I'm just an employee and I'm just doing what the owner told me to charge. Also, while you're suing the owner, you might want to sue every buffet in the city because they all charge a different price on the weekends. I'll complain to the owner and make him fire you for charging me too much. At this point, I was already done with him and just left him talking to the wall. The owner later asked what happened, and I told him, and he agreed with me on the situation. There were no lawsuits. And our second story. Want me to close and be out by 9:30 exactly? No problem. So I had just graduated high school and was in search of my first job. Having no luck, a friend of mine who was assistant manager at our local Subway took me on for closing shift. She taught me the ropes of working the front, just making sandwiches and learning to use the register while she did the work in the back. When I was free, I would help clean and do dishes for her. With 2 people working closely, everything was just fine. A few days later, the manager quits and doesn't come back. Very next day after that, the assistant manager who hired me quit too. I'm not sure why they quit, maybe an issue with the owner, I don't know. An hour into my shift, the new manager guy struts in twirling his store keys and says, "I'm your new manager," walks into the back and leaves a few minutes later saying he'll be back. So here I am, alone on closing shift, 4 p.m. to 9 p.m., with no idea how to work the back, never done prep, never recorded temp logs, nothing other than dishes. This is the time of year where the store's pretty busy, so I'm stuck up front the entire shift with a constant line of customers and no manager in sight. Eventually, closing time rolls around and I do all my normal duties up front: clean, put food away, turn off the lights, count the till, lock up. I'm out by 9:30, believe it or not. Next day, I go to work and the manager is waiting for me and says I screwed him over this morning by not leaving out bread for him. So I apologize and tell him I didn't get training for a bunch of stuff in the back because I work the front end. So he shows me how to do bread and some of the prep work, gives me his number, then leaves. I have another work shift alone now. The day goes as it does, except I know how to do bread and prep work. Everything is going fine for a month. I try to do some work in the back whenever I get a break in customers up front. However, we keep getting an increase of customers to the point where I can no longer work in the back because the moment one customer walked out, a new one would walk in. And some of the customers were problem customers. Now I have to do all the work in the back at closing, so I leave around 10 p.m., an hour after closing. Next day, I tell my manager that it's getting harder to work the job alone. He ignores me and then proceeds to give me even more work that I'm supposed to do. Now I have to wipe the windows and doors, mop the floor every night, clean the oven, clean the restroom, record temp logs, count bread, cook bread, stock chips, do 2 days of prep work in advance, and all this on top of my shift work that I would have to do during store hours. I'm now leaving work at midnight to 1 a.m. when my shift should be ending at 9:30. During the day shift, we have 2 workers who are supposed to have everything done like prep and dishes. However, with each passing day, they skip more and more of it and leave more and more work for me. I'm now walking home at 2 in the morning, in tears from the sheer amount of workload, crap customers, and stress every day. I then get my first write-up for not properly doing my work and part of the day shift's work. I tell my manager that he has me working alone during day shift work on top of closing work with mass herds of customers every night. He doesn't care. But one day, the day workers who work sometimes hears me and tells me to call him if I ever need help closing. He then gets fired a few weeks later. Now I'm alone again, leaving work at 2 or 3 a.m. The owner one night walks in and sees me working and asks if I'm the closer. Who else could I be? Like, really? So he collects his money from the safe and leaves. Next morning, the manager texts me, says I shouldn't be working that late, and that if I don't clock out by 9:30, he'll write me up again, and that he'll check the clock and clock out himself. I'm not about to clock out and do several hours worth of work for free. That night, I did the crappiest job I could do. Minimum prep, half-butt washed everything, threw everything into the fridge unorganized, and even then I wasn't able to do all of the work that he had given me, so I did what he told me. I clocked out at 9:30, locked up, went home the earliest I've ever went home in the few months that I've worked there. Next day I showed up and the manager is furious, telling me I did a crap job cleaning and that I skipped a bunch of the work. I asked him, do you want all the work done perfectly or for me to clock out at 9:30 on the dot? With you making me work alone, you certainly aren't getting both. I quit right there on the spot. Went home and he had to work closing doing all the work he placed on me himself until he found some poor sucker to replace me. I've heard from the people that replaced me that they hated it and quit. I only know one worker who stayed, and that's probably because the store started to die down again and wasn't nearly as busy. And our last story. Get me fired for not doing your job? Get owned. Backstory. I played golf for a university and was fortunate enough to have a scholarship that paid for me to go to school. Back in the summer of 2004, I was arrested for a DUI. I blew a .09 when the legal limit is .08 BAC. I didn't know any attorneys where I lived, went out of state for school, but had a very dear friend that thought he could help me out. I was referred to a guy I will call Tom, name changed. I paid Tom $1,500 to handle my DUI, and he said that was the friends and family discount, and I figured I'd be in good hands. Couple months later, being an idiot kid, I say kid even though I was 23 at the time, I got pulled over again and was driving on a suspended license, car impounded, ticket, etc. My coach was not pleased and I was removed from the team. To this day, I don't blame my coach, he made the right decision. I ended up having to leave school and move home as I could not afford to stay without my scholarship. The above is important because Tom, being the attorney of record, got all of my notices to appear in court and was required to appear on my behalf since I no longer lived in the state. Over the next couple of years, I found out on 3 or 4 occasions that I had a bench warrant for my arrest for failure to appear in court. I knew nothing about having to appear due to the fact that I was not receiving any of the notices and Tom was not showing up to get my simple DUI taken care of. Another year passed and the DUI was still not settled. I was moving on with my life and finally got a good job working as a recruiter for a national company. Life was looking up and I was enjoying the work. After about a month at the new job, my supervisor pulls me into the conference room and informs me that the company had run its mandatory background check and asked me why there was a bench warrant out for my arrest in another state. I inform him of the DUI. For those that may ask, in the application it asked if I had been convicted of any felonies. Technically, the DUI was not settled, and a first DUI is rarely ever considered a felony. He tells me that due to their insurance company not being willing to cover me, I would be let go, and that day would be my last. I was defeated. It had taken me months to get that job and get out of waiting tables. I called Tom to see what the absolute F was going on with my case, and now I had yet another bench warrant out for my arrest. He dodged my calls for days. I started keeping call logs on when I called and if I was able to reach him, etc., but it was to no avail. He basically disappeared. The revenge. I started looking into what it would take to file a complaint with the State Bar Association. This is not a simple process, and you have to be able to prove the attorney was negligent in how they were handling your case. Fortunately, my mother was a stringent records keeper for matters like this and had the call records for the last several months, along with the minimal documentation, contracts, etc., from when we hired Tom. We filled out what seemed like an endless supply of forms for the complaint and sent everything we had to the State Bar Association. It took several months, but once the Bar Association looked into the case, they wrote to inform me that they had suspended Tom's license from practicing law for 10 years in that state, and he would not be able to appeal it for 5 years. They also refunded me the $1,500 that I paid him, which went to hiring a new attorney. The new attorney was great and was able to get the matter resolved within 6 months, but she did tell me that when she appeared before the judge, he was visibly upset at me due to how Tom had handled the case. I was not given any leniency and got a maximum fine amount and 3 years unsupervised probation. All totaled, it took almost 4 years to get my DUI case settled in court. My probation has been over and done with for a while, but I still smile knowing that Tom is still unable to work in his primary profession. And for those wondering, I do still drink, but when I do, I drink responsibly and take a cab. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.